This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Today on the show, I have Jack Schwager. Jack has been on my podcast twice before. You will know him as the author of the best-selling Market Wizards, the new Market Wizards, Hedge Fund Market Wizards, Stock Market Wizards. Today, we will talk his newest, the Little Book of Market Wizards. Also, his new program called Fund Seeder. I think for those aspiring money managers out there, you will enjoy. Jack.
Hey, Mike.
How are you?
I'm okay.
I'm reaching you on the East Coast, somewhere in New England today.
You're reaching me in New York City, but only temporarily. Because be a month later, I'd be on the other side of the United States, because I'm going to be heading out. We're relocating to Seattle.
Ah, interesting. Well, I hope the transition goes smooth.
Yeah, well, it's always difficult, but if you want to do something, you just got to do it.
Yeah. So there's two big issues. I'm going to jump right in. Two big issues I wanted to chat with you today, and we won't chat too long, but you've got the new book out, The Little Book of Market Wizards, but you also have a new program out called Fund Seeder. And I thought maybe we would even start with that, because I have a feeling that's near and dear to you right now. But why don't you explain the concept of Fund Seeder, your involvement, how it all came to fruition?
Sure, so let me give credit where credit's due. It wasn't my idea, and nor am I the prime mover. So I have a colleague named Manuel Ballery who came up with the idea. And simply, the idea is that you have a lot of traders who may be good traders, and we're talking not only U.S. here, we're talking globally, but have just no way of getting anybody to, no way of getting money, and they may not have a lot of money themselves. It's not everybody can always start on their own. They can start on their own maybe with a little bit, and if they're really tremendous over many years, build up enough to be significant, like some of the people I interviewed. But it's a very long process, and there are seed investors out there who would like to find good traders, undiscovered traders, but have no way of knowing where they are. And the idea of this is to create a website that acts as a sort of a liaison where traders can go and have their trades vetted through the brokerage statements, or not the brokerage statements, but actually through the brokerage daily operation, just a direct link. And so investors could therefore see that the results are real, because people post all sorts of results that can say they made all sorts of types of track records without any actually demonstrating it. So investors never know if it's true without a lot of due diligence work and so forth. So the idea of the site is you get traders sign up, their trades in real time would be monitored and validated via the brokerage, and investors would be able to find these traders, and if they like them, see them. And so that's the basic concept. It's sort of bringing together traders and undiscovered traders for the most part, and seed investors using the power of the web.
As you and I know, and we've spoken to a lot of young upstart firms, upstart traders, this is a nightmare of a process to get started and get funded. It doesn't happen easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the absolute catch-22. So you can't get if you're good, you really can't get any money because you don't have a track record. You have a track record, but you can't get the track record without the money. So it really is a catch-22, and particularly, you may get now for a discretionary trader, maybe it's a little bit tougher to know absolutely that they've got something, because they could think they do, and they might be trading a little bit, assuming they don't have money, right? But for, let's say, a quant who comes up with an idea and is very rigorous, and I want to stress here, is very rigorous about testing it in a way which truly avoids hindsight and can get some statistical reliability, they can have some, if they do it correctly, they can have some sense of conviction they really have something. But they may be totally broke, So they may be able to trade a little bit, but not really enough to make any difference. It's really not enough to convince anybody normally. But if it's something like futures or FX, it's easy to scale up. And even if on a small amount, they can start demonstrating some sort of real consistency, particularly on daily data, which would be available, they could convince people to invest where normally they would have no chance.
And this is not necessarily the traders that might join up. They don't necessarily have to go to the regulation route. They could find private investors and stay away from the regulated environment if they don't want to go that direction, right? I mean, this is not necessarily saying you're obligated to go kind of in a regulated direction.
That's the whole thing. You don't have to set up a whole trading business. You could just get a seed investor that'll give you, a managed account to trade. Or, we also have, as part of the whole operation, we also have a colleague who's expert in setting up, the operation and doing the due diligence, and that route's also open if that's the preferable way to go. So that's possible, but it's not necessary. If you find a seed investor who says, okay, I'd like to open a managed account with trader X, Y, Z, they can, through us agree on terms, and basically it's done. It doesn't have to go it doesn't have to go the whole full setup of a trading operation and all the regulation involved.
Well, it's a very straightforward concept. I will be shell-shocked if you don't get quite a bit of response. I guess the issue will be combing through and finding the nice traders versus folks that maybe don't really have it. I guess that's the trick.
Well, that's where the software comes in to aid that. And right now the site is pretty much a landing site for the moment. Which explains the concept as I've just explained it to you, but a little more neatly for a neat cartoon or animated thing. But the idea is that when the site is fully functional, from the investor side, they can go in and they can do searches in all sorts of ways. And also one of the things which I thought of in the beginning, said, look, we can get people, you can vet people in real time, but real time's real slow. So the idea is you also need to have some way to be able to verify past track records. So we will have the capability for those traders who are willing to pay the cost of an audit in-house, which would be less expensive. Their past results could be audited, so we would only post results that were audited. So investors could actually maybe specify a minimum amount of past track record, because that would apply to traders who have had their past results audited. So the software and the availability of data would aid in searches given whatever filter. So you could say, give me a trader with at least 2 years track record, no maximum drawdown, whatever, minimum return of this, or a ratio, or certain ratio values or multiple values. There'll be ways to search the database to find, to kick out just a list of those traders that you're looking for. And the site itself will list leaders in certain categories.
Well, you were careful at the beginning there to say that this is a global opportunity. And as
yes.
I'm calling you from Southeast Asia today, and there's no doubt about it that whether it's Singapore, Hong Kong, there are quite a few traders in this part of the world that perhaps don't often, I think they're kind of like, I don't want to say last in line, but, America and Europe has gotten a lot more recognition, and this has been more at front and center. But I think there's probably quite a few hidden gems in Asia that have not yet had a chance to get funding.
Well, absolutely. And here's a perfect example of dilemma. And Emmanuel and I were out in China and Taiwan and just a few months ago, and we were meeting with different groups. And, in one case I can remember, they presented us with some certain track records. And these track records, on daily data, I have my way of analyzing performance. And, some of these numbers were phenomenal, but you don't know if they're real. You don't know, you're given this, but how do you know if it's real? But I have no doubt that somewhere, in China, of all those people who do trade, there are probably some talented traders there, and so this would open it up to traders from anywhere. And the ultimate goal will be to, in fact, have certain sub-sites, which, let's say, there will be eventually, let's say, a site which will be in Chinese, so it will be more accessible to Chinese traders. So you'll have both subsets and as well as the main site, which will be global investors and global traders.
Let me shift gears on you. So I'm much appreciative that not the last time I think, but one of the most recent times I spoke with you, it was about the Hedge Fund Market Wizards book. So I appreciate the fact that my homework and the amount of reading that I had to do for the little book of Market Wizards was far less. So I thank you for that, Jack.
Yeah, you can think of it as Market Wizards for Dummies, or Cliff Notes of Market Wizards, or whatever.
Yeah, but as I was going through it, it's those, and I'm reading Peter Brandt's forward, and he was making the comment that he always likes to check out your books once a year. And, as I was going through, I was seeing those pearls of wisdom that I've read over the years. And, sometimes you forget them. And I think one of the points that I wanted to throw out to you early on is that when you started this project, the first Market Wizards book, and obviously you had been in the industry, you'd had quite a bit of experience, but did you really deep down know, as you were putting the first book together and the second book and continuing, did you know that so much of the wisdom from these various men and traders would be timeless?
That I did to some extent. Yeah, I did. In fact, that was my goal. I mean, I do remember very clearly when I sat down to write the first Market Wizards book, that the one book I had in mind was a book I know you all know, and a number of traders you have interviewed have mentioned, which is Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. Now, this, I guess a good portion of your listenership will be familiar with it, but for those who aren't, this is a book that is a narrative written. The protagonist is Jesse Livermore, never named as such. There was a time many years ago when I read it, I think some people thought it was so well done that people thought it was actually Jesse Livermore himself who had written under a pseudonym. But no, the author was actually a journalist who did write this book. But what struck me then, and I was reading it 65 years after it was written, and markets had structurally changed a great deal from the days when Livermore operated. But what struck me was how valid, some of these points were. You could still remember. I could still remember some of the lines, and they were absolutely still true. I remember talking about like us having two trades, and one was losing money and one was making money, and he gets out of the one that's. He gets out of the wrong one, or talking about why he made money. He was like saying it was never my thinking that made the money; it was my sitting, and going into the point about patience with a position that's working, and all these things they still related totally to trading as it was then. It was timeless, and I thought if I was going to do a book, it wouldn't be the same format, of course. But I was hoping, and my goal was really, and it does sound maybe immodest, but it was my goal, was that, hey, I would like to do a book that 65 years from now, when I was writing it, which is now 25 years ago for the first one, or 26 maybe, that people would still be reading it and would still be valid. And the fact that that first book, as old as this quarter century, still sells pretty well, is kind of a testament to the fact that the markets at some very fundamental level haven't really changed that much, and trading really hasn't changed that much. And even though structurally things have changed tremendously, especially on the quantitative and technology side, what hasn't changed and what will probably never change is human nature.
Yeah. I'm surprised when, even going through the little book of Market Wizards, I'm surprised at how much writing and pontification and whatnot that I see out there that seemingly, and I'm not saying they have to read your books to get this. You just mentioned the book about Jesse Livermore, but they seemingly ignore the basic precepts. And it's in some ways, I feel like I'm watching the same script unfold. But then when I tune in, like I did today at the Little Book of Market Wizards, I'm like, here's those basic principles. You just read these and you kind of sit back. It's like, drinking like iced tea on a nice warm day or something. You're like, this is good.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. But you get some readers, and I would say it's probably the minority, who come to these books and they're looking for someone to hand them something on a silver tray, like, you buy where this indicator is this way, and then you get out here and you use that. And they're looking for a recipe, and a recipe that will make them millionaires. And if the book doesn't give them the recipe, they feel that they feel let down.
But your book does give them the recipe, but it's just a matter of whether they want to see it or not.
Well, or whether they can see it or not, or whether they even know enough to see it or not. I always think there was every now and then I'll go on Amazon and just check, just see what I'm always interested in reader reviews, and a book like the Hedge Fund Market Wizards. I think 95% of the reviews are like 5-star. Then you get one like 1-star. Like recently, I saw one 1-star. So what's the beef? And the person could actually read that 550-page book and make a statement like, there was not a single thing in this book about making money. I mean, where are you here? What trading planet are you on? I mean, to say there's not a single thing, and he was so unable to see anything that he said, well, Schwager must pay off people to write reviews, because how else could he get all these 5-star reviews? He was so blind he couldn't even understand what people saw in the book.
Well, you're going to the area of trolling and hate, and trolling and hate is something that typically I think you have to get a psychologist or a psychiatrist involved, and probably heavy medication. We're not going to solve those poor folks in this conversation.
What struck me though is the mindset that some people come to this with, that you can give them a lot of information. And they're completely blind to it. They don't even know it's information, because they're looking for the easy way, basically.
Let me jump into a couple points here, just in the book. I don't want to go through everything because, people need to go read, and that's not the point of our conversations, to give them a flavor. So I caught something with Fareed Zakaria the other day on CNN, and he recommended a book called The Upside of Down: Why Failing Well is the Key to Success. And so here I am digging through your book, and I happen to see the section about failing and the section about Michael Marcus. And I don't know if you might want to run through that example or even another one, but just the idea of, I think in today's society, everyone expects the chick to come out of the egg and be a full-grown rooster running down the field at 100 miles an hour. And somewhere we've lost this idea that failing is okay, and frankly, failing is smart.
Yeah, well, failing is more than okay. It's actually an essential part of success. And I'm glad you brought that up. And by the way, let me just give a plug here. You mentioned Fareed Zakaria. I just want to say, people who are not familiar with the show on Sunday mornings, he's one of in his books also. Fareed is one of the clearest thinkers out there about politics and economics, and just absolutely is just such a straight thinker, and down the line, not a political. I can't tell if he's Democrat or Republican. That's the beauty of it. He's just logical. He just has the right solutions to these things, which is just anybody clear-minded and fair-minded would get, but it's just so refreshing to see that. So, but anyway, let's. So this book that he mentioned, which has the theme about learning from failure, and this has come up a number of times. I will get to Marcus in a second, but I'll mention Ray Dalio, who Bridgewater, that whole firm is built on the concept that learning from mistakes is the key thing, and he makes he almost worships us at the altar of failures, as I would put it. And by the way, and I know sometimes you've gotten into the subject of education and what's wrong with it too. So Dalio made a good point when we were interviewing. He said that our whole educational system, one of the big mistakes is that we built an educational system that wants only the right answer. We want kids to regurgitate the right answer. His point is, the way you really learn is by letting kids fail and learn from failure and building on that. And that's how you get successful, not having them repeat only the right answer. And we ingrain in kids this fear of being wrong, which is terrible because that's what you need to learn. But okay, so let me go back to...
you could roll with it anyway. I think people love this. No, this is great because this is what people are thinking about. This is the real stuff. And you're right. And the failure is great. And I was just reading Dalio's Principles the other day and him talking about being in college and the whole process. And I think he was working out of a small apartment. And, there might be people today that say, oh, who cares? He's managing $100 billion now. But there he is telling you, here's how I started. Here's how I did it. Here's the mistakes I made
and learn from. And so that and the thing that surprised me at one point was how many of the people I interviewed for these Market Wizard books had failed, not just failed once, but multiple times, and sometimes, they flamed out in spectacular fashion. And you mentioned Marcus, which is, I won't go through the whole story, but just quickly for those readers who haven't read the original Market Wizards, Marcus, started out, and the first time he started trading, he started in college because somebody told him he had a roommate, or not a roommate, but a friend of a roommate, who said he could make a lot of money in a few weeks' time, and that appealed to him. And he ended up getting involved in futures trading, and quickly learned his advisor knew nothing, but ended up losing his account nonetheless. And then decided to get serious and study it, and came back the next year and with more money. And he didn't have much money to begin with, and tried trading again. And then it was the year of the corn blight, and he had been reading fundamentals on it, and he got familiar with charting, and he caught the corn blight, and he turned his 3,000 into 50. And then he got this great idea that the blight was going to weather over for the next year. So he took his whole $50,000, actually, I think it was, I think he had, I forget the exact number, but he was close to 50, but then he borrowed another 30 from his mother. I forget the exact totals, but it was something like that. And his mother didn't have much money either. And he fully margined himself in being long, mostly corn and also wheat. And then one day there was a story in the, I think it was Wall Street Journal, or something like, the headline read, "There's more blight on the floor of the Board of Trade than in the fields of the Midwest." And the market quickly went limit down. He was wiped out again. And he went on from there. He wasn't just like the two-way. He kept on. And you sort of I listened to this litany, and he said, I said, hey, Mike, did you ever think that maybe you weren't cut out for this? Maybe you just weren't cut out. And he said, no, I just kind of, he used this imagery from Fiddler on the Roof, where the protagonist is on the roof talking to God. And he didn't mean he literally was talking to God, but he said, and he's like looked up and he said, "Am I really that stupid?" And he said, "No, I'm not." He just believed in himself, and he just kept at it. And Marcus went on to eventually turn a $30,000 account at Commodities Corp into $80 million, and that is a true story. And I know because I was at Commodities Corp. So early failure. In fact, that's the first chapter. Early failure is not predictive.
I'm going to paraphrase because I'm not sure if I have the exact quote off the top of my memory, but T. Boone Pickens had said that he had been broke 3 or 4 times, but he didn't know he was broke because he didn't have an MBA. And I thought that was right there in this space. So I have a kind of an interesting question I was thinking for you. So all these men, and I'm not sure if you've had any women in your book. I know there's been some very successful women traders, but these men in your books, have you ever, when we think about the emotional and psychological aspects of their success, their true understanding of self, and I had Daniel Kahneman on my podcast recently, and obviously he's a brilliant guy and has set the world on fire with a lot of his thoughts and thinkings. But I almost wonder sometimes if some of the men in your books have maybe not properly received the credit for their insights into behavioral economics, because they were just traders making money for clients and themselves. But what they were doing was really, in my humble opinion, and some of these men, their track records go back 60s, 70s, quite a long time back. In my humble opinion, they were the guys that had behavioral economics figured out.
Yeah, well, but by definition, almost. Yeah. And by the way, let me give you a bit of applause here, and the fact that you've got, I noticed in your podcast in recent months you started getting some very interesting people outside of the immediate realm of trading, but with obvious, sometimes with mostly connections, like Kahneman, who's just the brilliant early protagonist of behavioral economics, not even an economist himself. First, probably the only non-economist that will ever win a Nobel Prize in economics. But so that was a great little interview, and I think it's terrific that you're thinking outside the box and getting people, like Ariali and some others that you've had on your podcast.
I think you mentioned Jack Horner. I think you listened to my
and Jack Horner. I like that one too. And some very interesting stuff on the whole concept. You learn something about that whole side of his world and how the conventional scientists were getting it wrong about dinosaurs and species, and he, as a non-scientist but thinking sort of out of the box, was able to eventually to find the right answers and to change the whole theory of as it was in the original conventional scientific community. Of course, his was science, but it was a little bit outside the box, and of course, it was eventually accepted. Again, that's sort of interesting stuff, and
I think it dovetails right into the insights from the men in trading in your book. And then when you look at the big picture of these things, finding an edge, hard work, being effortless once you mastered it, discipline, it's all the same to me. I think that's why I had Jack Horner on. It all seems the same to me.
Yeah, well, and Horner's a perfect example. There's a guy who just loved what he do. If he got enough to eat, but he could do his science. That's all he wanted to do. He loved it, and that's one of the key points I've got, is that the people who really succeed in anything, whether it's trading or something else, are the people who really love what they do. Kahneman, you mentioned, for that interview, you could just hear this guy loved doing what he did. He loved doing this research, and it comes through.
Well, I was going to save my last question for you was essentially the same direction. Clearly you're very passionate about this. I don't know if you necessarily thought that what would unfold. It would have been very difficult to predict the following and the interest in the audience for this whole series of books. And you've had other books, obviously, but the Market Wizards books. But you're clearly very passionate about it. And so where does it stop? Is it waiting for the next round of great traders to appear so you can get inside their head? Does it ever stop? I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, no. I always think I never think I'm going to write another book, and I always end up writing another book. So I just never know for sure what it's going to be. Absolutely, but I am, I guess, writing and speaking also. Those are two things I really enjoy doing. Oddly enough, trading isn't one of my passions. It just ended up the subject that I ended up writing about. But that's okay too. You have to know what you really like. And so I guess that my enthusiasm on that side of it comes through. And the next book, well, I don't possibly my next book, but one of the books I will write, and it's sort of tied in with this fund seeder site, and there's going to be something called and ties into a fund seeder search. The idea is this site, I have no doubt, will uncover lots of traders, good traders that nobody in the world knows. Are completely unknown. And so somewhere down the road, and it'll take a bit of time, to be able for these people, for the records to see them trade, for the records to be verified for long enough and so forth. But somewhere along the line, I anticipate there'll be a book called Undiscovered Market Wizards, which will be just what it says. It'll be people that we found that were totally unknown, but extremely good. And so that's a book somewhere out there. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be written, but that's one that I have in mind.
I brought something up at the very beginning, and I'll make this our last question, but you mentioned, so a lot of people put websites up and they want to provide a service, and perhaps they don't do the traveling. But, you just mentioned being in Asia. I'm here now. But why don't you speak to the idea of travel, and that we like to think that the world is so digital, but there is something to be said about still getting on that plane, even if it's a pain in the butt to travel 8,000 miles. When you go to another, you go the other side of the globe and you get involved with other people and other cultures to bring, for example, your wisdom there. It opens up a whole different experience. It's just, to me, I just love the experience of doing that. And I'm sure you must have a passion for that aspect of it too.
Yeah, I mean, traveling is great. I mean, I like, I like seeing other places. I like that experience for sure. One thing that struck me though is not so much about the exoticness and how different. One thing on this last trip, this China trip in particular, that struck me was how much people are the same. And I was shocked. I gave a talk. I gave a couple of talks in front of at some Chinese conferences, and mainland China we're talking now, and there are hundreds of people there, but at a level of interest and people coming up, I didn't know anybody knows me in China, and just the idea that these people kind of read the book, knew the book, they totally were familiar with trading and everything else, and were passionate about it too. So not that different really from not that different from the U.S. Or anything else. And I was just surprised to see that level of enthusiasm and the similarities.
It's funny what you mentioned that. I think, but by being there, you open up a whole different aspect. Because I did 2 speeches in mainland China last year, and it's like 500-700 each presentation. And now, almost a year later, the numbers of people that send me emails, often bless them, not in the best English, but they want to interact. They want to connect. And so I'm sitting there thinking, dang it, I'm going to have to localize everything, because now I see that Chinese interest. I never saw it really before, but now having gone and been there and gone through the experience and met a lot of people, I bet you're going to start to have the same thing, where you're going to start to get more emails, and that it's going to be, you already mentioned with FundSeeder, you're going to go the Chinese localization. So you're already on that step.
We'll reach out to, it'll be globally, and eventually we'll have some portion of it focused specifically on making sure we get the Chinese audience, because that is going to be very major. Yeah. And one thing I always have, particularly have had whenever I've been in China, or when I get when my books are translated in Chinese, is I just love the idea. I just picture, isn't that great? Like, what would Mao Zedong think about Market Wizards sort of being a bestseller, in a financial book in China, and it's not that many years ago. It's just amazing,
Yeah, it's the government in China is still communist, but for those of you in America that have not yet had a chance to visit, the one thing you don't feel, you feel a lot of capitalism in China. It's complicated, but there's a lot of capitalism there.
Well, it's you've got more liberalism on the economic side, but obviously not on the political side.
Hey, Jack, so fundseeder.com is one of the websites that people can go to?
Yeah, just like it sounds, FundSeeder, one word, FundSeeder.com, fundseeder.com. And the site will explain what it is, and you sign up. And as developments are, as we get to each next stage, and particularly when the site becomes live, but all the information will be there, at least what it's about. And that's the site. Yeah.
Okay. And the little book of Market Wizards from Wiley is out and is available now. It just came out the last couple of weeks.
It just came out February 24th. Yeah. So very, very recently.
Okay. And that's everywhere, Amazon, you name it, easily found. The little book of Market Wizards.
That should be easy to find. And I'm doing, I started doing about a week or so ago, a little over a week ago, is I pulled out literally over 150 quotes from the book, and sort of one a day. I'm doing a quote a day on Twitter, at Jack Schwager. So if you want a quote a day on trading, you can sign up for that.
Jack, it's always a pleasure. I thank you for taking your time this morning, and we will chat again in the future, I hope.
That's great. I always enjoy our interviews, Mike.
Thank you, Jack. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash, or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take, along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government, and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.